Welcome to Spiritual Changemakers, the podcast that guides you through tough times with practical tools and inspiring stories. I'm Andrea Thomas, your host and the Sacred Transitions Coach. Join us as we hear from spiritual changemakers who have connected with their higher power and overcame adversity. Whether you are navigating a difficult transition or seeking to deepen your spiritual practice, our podcast provides guidance to help you find magic in the change. Come on this journey of self-discovery, empowerment, and transformation with us and unlock your potential to become your best self. Welcome to a new episode on Spiritual Changemakers. I'm Andrea Thomas, your host, and I'm excited about today's subject. I'm going to have a conversation with Josh about recovery. How do you recover from alcohol, from substance abuse? How do you go about it? How do you even allow your friends and family to help you? Or if you're on the other side, if you are a family member or a friend that has someone or a loved one around them that is dealing with addiction, then we are also going to share some tips on tools on what you can do. So I'm excited to have Josh because he's a very dear, good friend of mine. We have met, oh my gosh, I wish I would remember the year, but it was probably 2015 or 14. Hopefully he's gonna remember when we met at a music festival. We are both big lovers of tech music, and that's how our journey started. So let me bring him on. Recovery. Welcome.
Hi, Andrea. How you doing?
I'm amazing. How are you doing? I know it's very early in the morning for you right now.
It's okay. You know how they say the early worm, the what is it? The early bird gets the worm or something. So
yes, that's very, very true. So welcome. I'm so excited to have you here and to share your beautiful story about recovery, about addiction, about alcohol, substances, and all of it. And, I would say it's so brave for you to want to share your story around this because I think a lot of people deal with this, but not everyone has the courage to share it. And I know even for me, it took me years to be able to share about my own story where I had a near-death experience because of a substance. Because I think it's a lot of shame, no, behind it, a lot of guilt on using it because it's perceived of being something so bad. So I'm excited to go into the story, into your journey. And before we dive deep in, can you tell us a little bit on how do you define spirituality and how do you use it in your day-to-day life?
absolutely. And yeah, so spirituality is just it's such a just such a large it's just such a large subject. But in my life, what spirituality has done and has been is basically the connection within myself. A lot of people kind of want to look at spirituality as this kind of external, very like, almost deity type thing. But in reality, spirituality starts within yourself. It starts with this deep connection with your vibrations, with your soul, with your energy. And then with that connection, you're able to then connect to this exterior life. I mean, anything, other people, other beings, animals, plants, even nature. So spirituality, I think, has a lot to do with the connection that one has within themselves. And then that connection then can go to something else. And exterior.
Such a beautiful description. And I am a big believer that if you are not connected with yourself, then it's impossible to connect with anything else because it all starts within.
Absolutely. And I think this is actually kind of the best way to describe why people have substance abuse, right? There's this huge connection with okay, so humans across the board, and this is how you started this podcast. We are huge music lovers, right? And so in the music scene, for instance, people are going out of their day-to-day lives to have a connection with the music, with the lights, with other people, right? And this is where substance abuse can kind of get in, and just kind of hide itself in this sort of wanting to connect with something. And so a lot of people that I've talked to that, have kind of found this path of substance abuse find themselves wanting to connect with something. And so then when they, start abusing substances, they find that sort of fake connection with themselves. In reality, what they're doing is they're not connecting with themselves. They're connecting with this sort of, fake self, right? And so, they might have some sort of spiritual connection, right? But in reality, what they're doing is that they're actually, connecting with themselves less. And perhaps then sometimes they're having these beautiful connections with the music, which, yeah, it can happen. But in reality, they're connecting with this false self into the music.
And you said something there. You said they are connecting with their false self. So how would they know, and how do you know, like, when you have this deep connection with yourself? What is the difference when you don't have to use anything external, especially substances? Because yes, we can use external things as music, meditation, and so on as stimulators to connect deeper with ourselves, but not like substances that we put in our body in order to feel a deeper connection. So how people see the difference between the real connection and the fake self connection?
Okay, so that's a fantastic question, and this is something that even to this day, I'm trying to figure out, right? But what I can tell you in this very, very lifelong journey that I've seen, right? So I believe it's going to evolve, but for what I've seen now is, okay, so when one has connection with themselves spiritually, or just with themselves 100%, right? Just what ends up happening is you have this sort of prolonged result, I guess. Okay. So let me give you an example of this beautiful hike that I did, that I found some sort of connection with myself. And then when I used to abuse substances. Okay. So here you are, I'm abusing the substance. I'm going to a party, or, I am about to go to an electronic music festival. What ended up happening is, as I was walking in, I would say, okay, I need to do this, because in order for me to be able to connect with people and to be able to connect with the music, I need to be under the influence. And so, boom, I would do it, and then I would be like, oh my God, I'm the coolest person here. I feel so great. The music is fantastic. But then it would wear off in 3-4 hours. And then I would need to either re-up. And so alcohol was like this, right? And so I would automatically, right outside of and I would open the door and I'd say, hey, I need to have a shot right the moment I need to go in there, because I need to loosen up. I need to feel that I'm connected with something, right? And it would be very, very short spurts of feeling.
Short-lived.
Now let me show you what the hike was like. So at the very bottom of the mountain, I'm, thinking to myself, I'm like, oh my goodness, it's so early. What am I doing? I don't understand, why I do these things to myself. But as you start hiking and you start kind of going up the mountain, and you see this beautiful squirrel and you see this beautiful tree, you start having kind of these like little inner monologues with yourself, and you said, hey, wow, you know what? Like, this is actually not that bad. It's actually, yeah, I might have had to wake up at 5 in the morning. And so as you start going up the mountain, etc., right, you get into the top and you realize, holy cow, I did this myself. And I mean, maybe I need to start going to the gym, so like next time I'm here, it's going to be better. So it's this sort of like process. But when you get to the top of the mountain and you come back, that whole quote unquote high, that whole feeling of just connecting with yourself, you're like, holy cow, I just did that by myself, and I had these beautiful conversations, and I bonded with a squirrel, I bonded with my trees, I bonded with the sky. That rides with you for a week, 2 weeks. So at the end of the day, the experience that you have by literally just being with yourself and having this sort of spiritual connection with mind and body is so much longer than just those 3-4 hours that you would have had with substances.
I 100% agree, because I know, like, when I go hiking, and I've been a lot hiking since I'm here in Italy at my mom's place, I love like being in nature, and I say to the trees and the nature, like, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for holding the
Yeah.
space for me, you know, thank you for sharing your beauty with me. And so the biggest difference from what I heard you sharing is how long it lasts. So when you use the substances, the alcohol, it's like short-lived. And I think afterwards, I don't know if you agree with me, but afterwards you actually feel even worse than you felt before, because it does create that separation, from your soul. When you take the substances and when you use alcohol, it's a way to actually numb yourself and not to deal with the reality, to say it out like that, the what is actually happening outside, and it creates an even bigger disconnection with yourself afterwards. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And I think the a really important thing to mention here, right, is, you know, there's this terminology that's kind of thrown here, right? And so to answer your question, absolutely, yes. I mean, after, in my case, right, after I would have, a bender, and I would drink and I would drink and I would drink. And then, the next day I would feel, I mean, at first it wasn't like that. I would feel like, okay, wow, I'm cool. Just drink another beer and it won't feel that bad. But, as I started abusing alcohol a lot more and a lot more and a lot more, my body just automatically was like, Josh, you don't need this. But I was in this sort of, kind of mindset that said, hey, you know what? I need it. I just need it. This is what I need in my body. And that's where the substance abuse starts happening. So you're basically digging this hole, or digging the separation. Let's say that you're creating the separation between your mind and body and yourself. And then, as you feel really empty, and like you said, you feel really horrible, you start pouring more into it, and you're like, well, no, it's okay, I need more to feel higher. But in reality, you're digging this deeper hole, right? This deeper connection, this deeper separation from your body and soul. And so one of the things here that's super important to mention, right, is that a lot of these labels are thrown at people. You are an addict. You have this addiction, right? And I wanna kind of take that and redefine it, right? I am someone that will forever be an addict. Okay, I will, because I have it in my genes. My personality, I have an addictive personality. Okay, but the key here is that anyone that's listening to this too could say, well, I'm also an addict. Yes, but we have to redefine being an addict, right? I had, perhaps you had, everyone has problems sometimes with substance abuse, creating a dependency on a substance. Let's not look at it as, just because you have addictive qualities to negative things in your body, that makes you an addict. It could literally be being an addict to hiking, like we were talking about, or in my case, being addicted to listening to music, to DJing to music, to doing all those things. So it's really important to be able to separate that and say, hey, yes, I was struggling with substances, but just because I have addictive personalities, that doesn't make me a bad person.
Yeah.
You could be addicted to very positive things that are going to be better for your mind and soul.
Yeah, and I love that. I love redefining it, because yes, we all have this tendency to be addictive to something. It can be coffee, alcohol,
Yeah.
substances, music, sex, whatever it is. I think one or the other, we do have tendencies to be. But also, as you said, music, it's one of your addictions. So it's what I heard you saying, it's removing the negative connotation that we put on the addiction word, and be like,
Exactly.
okay, addiction can be like neither good or bad. It depends, is like, is it serving me at this moment? Is this helping me? Is it helping me elevate and grow towards where I want to go?
because it's not necessarily bad. It can also be good. And I don't really like using good or bad in general, the labels. This is where I say a lot the story of using good thing, bad thing, who knows, like just leading with curiosity instead of labeling something good or bad, because a lot of times when we go through something in that moment, it might feel terrible, it might feel hard, it might be like, oh my god, this is the worst thing that's happening to me. But just a little bit after, in a few months or a year or two, whatever, you realize that that experience was actually the best thing that ever happened to you, because it led you to ways and to beings within yourself that you wouldn't have experienced otherwise. So how long, I'm curious to hear, how long have you dealt with your addiction, with your substance and alcohol addiction? And what was that crossing point that you were like, okay, that's it. I have to create a change. I have to make a shift in my life.
Absolutely. So my substance abuse, I mean, I have to say it didn't take me, it took me, I mean, it took me a very long time for me to really understand that I had issues with it, right? So I started, going through substances and drinking and stuff at a very young age. You know, growing up in the United States, it was just very readily available, specifically where I'm at right now in Colorado. And so, it starts off with just little things, here and there, whatever. Where I started seeing that there was a pattern of dependency on the substance was when I would already kind of have myself set up where, if I was going to go out, or if I was going to go to a show, or, a festival where you and I met, right? I would already have planned out what I was going to do the moment I got in, what time I was going to drop, all of these things, right? And I would have to have a specific amount of alcohol around me so that I wouldn't have anxiety. So I started already building these insane emotions around having to have, hey, am I really close to the bar if I want to go to a bar? How much money do I have cash in so I can give the tip? So I was already kind of planning it to the point where it was already almost taking over the festival. So I only, there are times where I can go back and think about the festivals that I went to, and I'd only remember maybe 60% of the festival, and the other, 40% I'm doing something else. I'm going to drink, or I'm going to go do stuff, right? So this whole thing probably lasted, I mean, I'm talking maybe 15 years of my mind just completely being codependent on alcohol, right? As I started getting older, I realized that, well, I didn't realize, but I started observing that I would have episodes. It started by one episode every month. And when I mean episode is that I would have a complete alcohol bender where I would lose all consciousness of myself, all myself entirely. And I would, you know, be this completely different human being. And so my wife and I, we called it the Marvin effect. And so Josh would just become Marvin, right? And so, after some time, it started becoming 2 episodes a month. And then it started getting really scary because, I it would just be, I just would become another person, right? And it started then influencing in my family. Some of my friends saw these specific outbursts and stuff, and I started getting help. I mean, I needed to get help, right? And that's when they said, "Hey, Josh, have you ever thought about you having substance abuse?" And it's like, me? Substance abuse? No, you're out of time. Not possible. Yeah, and then that's when I guess this journey of kind of recovery and really connecting with myself started.
So you got to the point where you were blacking out. You were like drinking so much that you were blacking out, and that was like happening more and more often until to the point that you're like, okay, I think something is going on here, especially because you said you are totally shifting your personality, and that happens with some people, not with everyone, but like some people totally, like they become a whole different person. And what was it like, what was happening in your mindset, in your, like, within your interior for you to be open to make the shift and say yes to the change and receive help? And regarding the help, was it professional help? Like, did you reach out to professional help as well?
Yes. Now, what was happening in my head is that, and I didn't know this, right? And this has to help. This has to do with the professional help that I went to. I went to a group of amazing individuals. It was called Flatirons Recovery. They're here in Colorado, and we'll get into that in just a minute. But yeah, so it was a group kind of orientated into mindfulness recovery. And so what they did is they, instead of just looking at like hey, you have substance abuse problems, they looked beyond that and it said, what is triggering this substance abuse problem? What is triggering these sort of, I need to drink, I need to, get out of my mind? And so what I found out was, without me, I mean, this was in my subconscious. This was in so deep in my mind that I didn't even realize, is that I was picking up the bottle when I would start having these immense anxiety attacks. And in my mind, I'm like, anxiety attacks? I'd never had anxiety attacks. And the first thing that, my counselor told me was, Josh, you're an anxious person. You have anxiety, and so now we're going to work on this and we're going to have you connect with yourself so that it's not, like you said, it's not about, oh, Josh, you were bad, or, oh, this was good. It's not about that. It's literally about you being able to flow with your emotions and be connected with them so that they aren't consuming who you really are. And so when I would have my quote unquote subconscious anxiety attacks, I would want to go in and to a bar or even at home, and I would take 3 shots. Or when I wanted to be cool and like sexy with Margie, my wife, I would just like take a bunch of like, oh, I'm gonna drink a beer, I'm gonna drink a bottle of wine, let's drink this, let's drink that. And so it got to a point where it's like, how about we just don't? And then why don't we just enjoy this dinner? And for me, it was difficult for the reason, right? Because it was just this anxiety. So yeah, so it started out with me searching for help, and specifically in this group of people, it was very self-led. Like, where are you in your life? What kind of emotions are you feeling? Let's focus on those emotions. Let's connect with those emotions. But now let's disconnect the you who you think you are, and let's welcome the spiritual self. Let's welcome your core energy so that now we can process these emotions. And yeah, that's how the journey started.
And I love that it's a mindfulness recovery group. I love that, because I know a lot of people, they cannot relate to the AA, groups, to like traditional therapists. And because of that, I know people who have tried, who have been through that process. It just, they couldn't stick with it. It didn't work for them. And this is where I want to tell everyone that when we are dealing with a challenge, with an addiction, that it's so important to find what resonates with you, because there are a lot of different tools out there. You can get support on so many different levels, but you might have to try a few ones in order to find what works for you. And it sounds that, Josh, you have found your group from the beginning. And I think that has to do with the fact that you were kind of sort of on a spiritual path already, isn't it? So you are already immersed in that. Is that true?
100%. And I think that, to your point, like, yes, absolutely. I think, my and again, I'm not at all dissing or saying that AA is not good. I mean, it works for some people.
Yeah.
Specifically for me, though, right? I couldn't look at this in a technical, scientific way. Like, someone's like, well, this is why you have addiction and your percentages. And I didn't need that. My soul and my connection with myself needed to have this unity in order for me to be able to understand my body and my emotions. And like to your point, right? I was already on a spiritual path, but just I was looking at my sort of spiritual self only under this dependency of substances, when the reality of it and the truth behind everything was already in my heart and in my mind. It was always there. It was just knocking, always like, Josh, I'm here. Just listen to me. I'm here. And so when I was able to just open the door and really process those things, it was almost as if I got this kind of umbilical cord to the astros and the cosmos, and then all of this reality of myself and of my true self just started flooding in.
Yes. Oh, I love it. And what was coming through when you were sharing, I want to also bring to the audience, besides what are the ways, what are the tools right now, if they are dealing with alcohol or substance addiction, what are some of the ways that they can embark on creating that shift within themselves, how they can ask for support, how they can reach out for support? What would be, let's say, the first 3 steps? And I know it's going to be individual for everyone. So you guys, when you are listening, if you just hear one tool, one tip that it can help you, sometimes all we need, it's like a very small shift in our perspective to change our whole life. So this is my invitation to you when you are listening, to allow yourself to listen with an open mind and an open heart, knowing that, okay, some things might not resonate with you, but others, they can literally change your life. So tell us, give us like some juicy ways, some juicy tips and ways that people can start now from their spiritual self, from their spiritual being, on what is it that they can start doing today to create the shift and move towards more of that alignment and connection with themselves.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go through a couple of things here to just kind of process. But first of all, one needs to welcome in specific traumas or specific ideas that are inklings to yourself, right? And be okay with it. One of the most beautiful things that you said, Andrea, earlier was, I don't like to say if something's good or bad, because whatever happens, right, could have great outcomes, right? There's a beautiful expression that says every story has a happy ending, and if things aren't happy right now, then it's not the end. And so one of the most important things is to welcome these very, very tough feelings. And when I say tough feelings is, sometimes, you could be sitting there and someone mentions, hey, I love cats. And then that triggers a thought of this beautiful cat that you had, but unfortunately that cat's not there. This also has to be with people. Someone's like, hey, I had this great dinner with my mother, but then your mother's not here now in this moment, right? And then that also triggers these things. So just be very mindful of those moments. That's the big key here. Any conversation, any comment, even the tone of voice that someone says to you, or if they ignore you, anything can have this specific inkling trigger. And so my big ask here is that when those moments happen, take a second and analyze where in your body you feel it. Okay? And then in that moment, if this emotion has, you're like, holy cow, this is kind of resonating in my throat. This is resonating a little bit in my left arm, in my chest, in my stomach. And then take a few seconds to really analyze why it's all there. Just feel it. Just that moment, feel where that emotion is centered. And then just try to kind of open these little canal ways so that it could flow through your body. That's the biggest thing that has helped me. Another great tool that I could suggest for people is being grounded, right? Sitting up in making sure that your feet are both touching the ground and really feeling yourself being grounded. A lot of the times when people experience substance abuse is that they want to have some sort of connection with their surroundings. And so they want to either, take a few shots or drink a beer here because they want to feel connected. You can actually do that by being grounded, like seriously finding a good place where your feet feel really comfortable and then just feeling grounded. Like I am now standing on the ground. I'm feeling what I'm feeling and be completely connected with it. Another really important thing to understand here, and I think I was just touching it onto the first point when I was talking about feeling where it is, we are all full of charge. What is charge, right? Charge is the physical energy that you feel inside of your body, right? I like to call it charge. Other people say it's, energy, whatever. So I like to call it charge, right? So I'll give you a great example. My wife and I, when we see Andrea physically, we feel a lot of charge. And so we just want to go and hug you and like, hey, Andrea, how are you? That's charge, right? And charge can manifest themselves in so many different ways. You can feel negative charge when someone, says something to you that gets into some emotions that maybe you haven't processed, and you feel, oh man, I feel that negative charge, or, you feel someone's anger, and all of that is a charge exchange, right? So to my first point where I was saying, when someone says something emotional, or something that triggers your emotions, and it gets centered in a specific part of your body, that means that there's this charge dam somewhere in your body. And by doing breathing exercises and really not ignoring it, saying, oh, I just have this inkling here, but you know what, I'm going to just ignore it. No, really focus on that. And slowly but surely, you'll be able to distribute that charge throughout your body, and you'll feel so much better.
Beautiful tips. And I want to tell you guys, because I would say I have allowed myself the last few years to go very deep with my emotions, to go very deep within my traumas and feel it all. And at the beginning, when I opened the Pandora box, it was like, oh my gosh, crying every single day, because we all have traumas, and that's okay. Like it's part of being human. But what I want to tell you with this is that it is really safe for you to feel and process your emotions, because if not, those emotions, they remain blocked, stuck within your body, and that's what creates the disconnection, the disease, and on and on and on. And numbing was one of my coping mechanism of dealing with challenging times. And when you start processing your emotions, I don't know how it was for you, Josh, but right now, for example, when I get triggered, or when I'm taking back to like a past memory in the past, it's like it just happened literally now that I'm with my family, because you guys know that when you are with your family, that's when like everything
All the
comes to the
triggers.
So I was
triggers.
with my mom in the car, and we were having like a super intense conversation about my father and my parents, like separated when I was 14, and they haven't spoke ever since. And I was always like the middle person, the one that was trying to navigate everything between my family, because I'm the only one that gets along with both sides. So my mom was like telling me stuff, and it took me back into my childhood, where I was like taking full responsibility, and I was feeling guilt, and I was feeling it like so strongly in my stomach. And I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I'm 15 right now. And in that moment, I allowed myself to just feel it, and not just like feel it, but afterwards, I realized I also have to set a boundary. I had to set a boundary with my mom, where I'm like, I don't think this conversation helps neither one of us, because it just takes me back into the trauma, and there is nothing I can do about this situation. So sometimes it's also very important, especially with family. And I can tell you it's super hard, but it's possible because I'm doing it, to set healthy boundaries with your family, with your friends, so you help yourself. If not, if you allow yourself to just go into those places, you're just gonna make it worse, and you're gonna be in a negative energy and into a spiral. And also allow yourself to cry. Like I cry even in public right now. When something
It's
comes
healthy.
up, I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna even erase my tears. I'm just gonna embrace them. And who doesn't like it, who feels uncomfortable with me crying, that's their problem. They shouldn't look. But this is where we learn to embrace our own like authenticity, our own truth, and not feeling bad for feeling your feelings. And it is safe to feel it all. And I promise you that when you allow yourself to feel it all, I don't know how it's for you, Josh, and I would love to hear, but when you allow yourself to feel that pain, then also the joy and the happiness, and how you are able to find like just bliss and magical moments in this, like in everything, in like in very small things. Even like you just go on a hike and you're like, oh my God, look at this leaf. It looks so amazing. And I would love to hear about your experience. How was it for you once you allowed yourself to be with your emotions?
No, absolutely. And, you know, I thank you so much, Andrea, for touching that, because that's the big thing here is boundaries. Boundaries is huge, because without boundaries, then you aren't able to have that specific moment to really feel those things, right? And there are people, family, friends, even, you know, just spouses, not that my spouse, I'm not saying that, but I mean, I'm saying that there are people that are very close to you that without those boundaries, one cannot process these emotions, and they just add on to it. So yes, very, very good point. Boundaries are huge. I also think that when you like you said, like when you do feel these emotions and it does trigger specific, like some sort of intense emotion, and I want to say intense emotion being that you start sweating, crying, you start hysterically laughing, let let your body do that, because that's the charge exiting your body.
Mm-hmm.
And by you doing that, right, you do have this beautiful kind of aftermath. It's like this sort of, you know, your body automatically then comes back to itself, and then you have this like just beautiful realization of that felt so freaking good. Like I needed to cry, or I needed to laugh hysterically, or I needed to grab my pillow and shake it, because now I feel great. What happened with me is you know, when I consciously stopped having a dependency on substances, specifically alcohol, my mind started to kind of heal in ways that I did not know could be healed, in the sense that, you know, I didn't have that anxiety going into specific parties, or going into clubs, or going into raves. I didn't have that necessity of being like, okay, you know, I need to get something in my body. You know what I mean? It was more of like, I could actually really feel my surroundings. But more importantly, and this is very important to myself, is I was able to feel other people, and really have conversations with friends, and really connect with people on not just a surface level conversation of, oh, this is awesome, oh, I love this DJ, oh my God, this beat is awesome, oh, I love this club, but like really genuinely say, like, how are you doing, dude? How have you been for the last 3 months? How have you been for the last week? And that's another really important thing here too, is once you really connect with yourself on a spiritual sense, you also connect with friends on a spiritual sense, and you stop having surface level conversations with real people. And then you realize that there are other people that you can't have those very, very in-depth conversations, and that's okay. It's not that, oh, we need to distance ourselves, but that means that you're on a path of spiritual awakening. And sometimes it's okay to walk with certain people, and it's okay to, you know, not walk with other people, you know, and that's a moment of growth, and that's a moment of connection. That's very, very important.
Yeah, and once you learn how to have those deeper conversations with those around you, it actually becomes painful to just have mundane conversations. You know? You're like,
Absolutely.
I cannot do this. I cannot just talk about the weather. I cannot just, you know, it's just, it feels, I don't know, useless. And
Yeah.
I was literally writing a post today about the importance of letting go, of being willing to let go of those people that are not able to grow with you, to evolve with you. And this is where some people are gonna fall off because they cannot like match your vibration anymore. And some of them are gonna be jealous, envious, and so on. They're gonna be like, I cannot recognize you anymore. You are not the same person anymore. And they're gonna try to pull you back. And this is where you kind of have to be aware of like, okay, this person is actually not serving me anymore, because our chapter on what it was meant for us to be during this lifetime, it comes to an end, and being willing to let go. So afterwards, you actually let in those that are matching, and not just matching, but actually elevating your vibration.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the beautiful thing about that too is that when you have these sort of aha moments with these specific people, or this group of people that probably, I don't want to say grow out of, because that seems very pompous and kind of horrible, but you just you are looking at brighter things, or you are looking at a different direction. You actually separate, or you move on with love. And so it's not a horrible conversation, but it's that you have so much love to give that sometimes that the reciprocity of loving you is only take. And you're like, well, I need to find people, like you said, Andrea, that vibrate on that same level that I do, that have that give and take, give and take. And so you move on with a huge heart and with huge love. You say, hey, I love you, but I need to move on. I need to go to greener pastures. I need to go to somewhere where my mind and my soul can be expanded in ways that I can't even describe to you right now, right? And that does come with love. And if it's not coming with love, then that's in my opinion, right, a moment that you should really take there and say, hey, look, I'm doing this with love. I should never do anything with negative charge. I need to really focus in on what am I doing right now, and perhaps setting a boundary is the correct way of doing it, and then seeing where it takes you, right? But never, in my opinion, and I'll say to every listener, never ever ever do anything out of this negative hate or anything, because those are the types of things that in the future, maybe near or far future, do trigger then some sort of trauma, because then you say, wow, I was so horrible, and then that might cause some sort of ding in your armor. Whereas if you do things out of love and you say, look, dude, or look, man, or friend or family, hey, I love you, and because of this, I'm now moving on. That comes from a beautiful, very, very center mind, very spiritual way of moving on.
Yes, and I've just experienced something exactly like that, where I've just been through a huge heartbreak, where I had to make a decision, and I really looked at at the end, how can I move on with love, with thinking that, okay, this is the best decision for both parties involved. It's not just about me, but it's about both of us. Like whoever you are in a relationship with, always think about, as my amazing mentor is saying, for me, for you, for us. Like come at it from that perspective. And when you do that, coming from a place of love, compassion, and grace, like moving out of it with grace, I think you also elevate yourself, your self-worth, and then you lead as an example for those around you and for the person that you choose not to have in your life anymore. And now we have a little bit time left, but I would love for us to go a little bit into the topic of how do friends and family deal with the people that have alcohol and substances abuse. Like what is it that they can do to be supportive, to help the person that goes through that, and not come from this place of judgment and their own traumas around it.
No, absolutely. That's one of the biggest key factors of substance abuse with someone. So the big common thing to people think, okay, hey, I have a son, I have a spouse, I have a very close friend that is having you know substance abuse, and so like I'm not going to do this thing in front of them. I'm not going to drink in front of them because I don't want to. That is so horrible. Like that, you should never do that, because then that's also isolating that person. And so then that person feels like they have like a kick me sign in the back, like, oh, now people are changing, and that isolates the person. The one thing that you cannot do is make that person feel isolated, like you are this, you are labeled. To help someone go through it takes a huge level of compassion and patience. But here's the key: is creating a boundary, a huge boundary with the person. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, if that person isn't ready to find help, you cannot convince that person to find help. There are ways that you can come from a loving place and say, hey, I have this beautiful program that you can do, or hey, I have this beautiful idea that we can do. But ultimately, it's their decision to make that choice. It's their decision to make that recovery, right? So here are tips, perhaps. This is what I've done with family members. This is what I've done with friends, is having genuine conversations with them, not about the substance, but just genuine conversations. How are you doing today? Let's talk about this. Let's talk about that feeling that you're talking. Hey, real dissective conversations with the person. Let's talk about spirituality. Let me talk to you about this beautiful hike that I did in blah, blah. You know what I mean? That type of stuff. Another thing is perhaps changing up the plans. Don't go to a place that there's going to be alcohol, and if that person wants to bring their alcohol, okay, but I'm not going to do it, right? I'm not going to do it because you're here. I'm just not going to do it. Make the change. But like ultimately, the big thing here is create in the environment and create conversations where the person does not feel triggered, and then ultimately they will be guided to want to find recovery. But again, do not convince the person. They need to find them themselves. I mean, they need to walk their own path.
Mm. Yeah, and the truth is that you cannot change anyone. You cannot convince anyone to do anything. And I know the hardest lesson I've learned on myself with that was on my journey with Kalman when we were dealing with cancer. And I know I was pushing and I was trying so hard to make him change his food, like the way he's eating. And I was trying so hard, and I couldn't understand why, if he was in such a terminal state, he couldn't make that change. And I was so mad on him. And that triggered me. And thanks God I had the tools and the awareness to change that in time. But there was a period at the beginning where I was coming from this triggered place and forced place that you have to change it. And I think as humans, especially as evolved humans, we know better that no one is going to change just because you think you know better. And at the end of the day, what I realized on that journey, that it comes down on really, really trusting the other person. It's like trusting that, okay, they have their innate power and innate ability to make the change that is the best for their highest good. When and if that happens, we don't know. It's not in our control, and just allow them to be on their journey, because we are all on our journey here, walking as spiritual beings in this human body. So it's
Absolutely.
seeing them in their power. Like I would say this is a big thing, seeing the person, no matter what they go through, seeing them in their power, and trust that in their timing, on their journey, whatever it is that they are here to learn and do, that is going to happen for them.
No, and I mean, and the big thing here too is even though you could be the most secluded human being, the most introverted human being. We are humans, right? And so if we see, and this is what helped me personally, right, is I would see my wife have these beautiful conversations with her friends, and then even just in my family, right? And then she would come into my family and we would have this beautiful dinner and everyone was laughing, and I felt like this gray cloud because I had all this negative charge and all this stuff, right? And so if you are completely connected with yourself and your spiritual form, you automatically, I mean, your skin starts to glow. You have a beautiful smile. Like, this is what you were talking about, Andrea, where sometimes people get envious of this positivity, of just this connection that you have with the universe, right? But as someone that's guiding someone, or maybe perhaps being a role model for someone that has substance abuse, if you are this glowing orb of personality, right? Automatically this person's going to say, I want to get there. I want that. And you're like, well, dude, you can have it. That's the beautiful thing, because it's inside all the time. It's been there the entire time. You just have to connect with yourself with it. You just connect yourself with it. And so that's the best way to be able to kind of set the path for someone that has substance abuse problems, is being yourself, that spiritual self, and being patient, like you said, having this just beautiful patience, because again, like you said, everyone has their own path, their own timing, their own journey.
Yes, and for me, I remember going to a Reiki session after my partner passed, and I asked the teacher, I asked her, like, why is it that he was not able to make that change that I was so desperate for him to make, because I thought at the beginning that that's what is gonna save him, you know? And then she told me it's because he was not a vibrational match for that change, and his higher self knew that even though he's gonna make that shift right now, it's not really gonna save him. It's not really gonna make a difference. So his higher self knew that, and he chose to continue enjoying food because he loved food. So while he was still here on earth, he's like, why not keep enjoying what I can if I love it, you know? Because this is where we have to remember that they have their own connection, you know, with the source, the people around us, and it can be strong or not so strong whatsoever, but they feel into what is going to serve them or not.
Yeah. And another really important thing too with someone that is there's a graph, and I'm going to try to read it to you guys, but this is something that really helped me, right? So someone that has I hate to say problems, but they have substance abuse codependencies, right? Specifically, it goes into this. So let's put something triggers it. So let's just say trauma. There's a trauma that is affecting the mind, right? And so it goes into a trauma, and then it goes into this little bracket, this belief systems. I have this trauma, so this is what needs to happen. Yeah. So then this trauma goes into impaired thinking, right? So your mind isn't making these correct decisions. And then you go into addiction, right? And so this sort of, I need a substance. This is exactly what I need to do to get out of this impaired thinking. And then it goes into this bracket of, you can't manage the things that you are addicted to, right? And so then this unmanageable sort of rhythm then goes into another belief system, and then the cycle just kind of keeps on going. So you go into this sort of black spiral, right? of beliefs and of non-connecting, non-wholesome, I guess, non-wholesome thought processes, right? And then you disconnect yourself from yourself. So on the other side of this, right? When you have someone that has their kind of blinders on and they think of these, this is the way, this is the way, this is the way, you can only just say, hey, I have maybe perhaps a solution, or maybe perhaps a different path, right? But ultimately, you are going to decide whether you go on it or not, right? So yes, you also have to understand that other people have different solutions, and other people have different energies and vibrations and how to think about it. It's just ultimately boils down to the patience and just the mindfulness of being able to be with that person.
Mm. And from everything you have shared, Josh, I heard you saying that even the support you have looked for, it was a mindfulness group. You have connected deeply with yourself and then deeply with others. So spirituality and mindfulness, it sounds like it has been a big part of your recovery and feeling whole again.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And it's definitely with people that are like me, right? I want to say that, you know, Kalman and I have a similar stubbornness. For me, it was getting something, it was getting help externally,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the two groups that I would suggest, and these are international, it's Recovery Dharma. Recovery Dharma is a phenomenal resource, and you don't have to go into a physical space. You can do this while you dial in, which is fantastic. And then another one is Smart Recovery. So the difference between Recovery Dharma and Smart Recovery Dharma focuses a little bit more on the Buddhist and Zen sort of recovery programs, whereas Smart Recovery is a little bit more of like, you know, an analytical approach to recovery. And so these groups are, you know, all guided by professionals and even people that are in their own process of recovery, and it's phenomenal. I mean, I think having these two sort of different ways of, you know, finding recovery is really interesting. You know, you can kind of pick and choose, like you said, you know, hey, I really, this resonates with me and this side resonates with me. And there are so many resource groups locally on an international level besides AA. And if AA works for you, then do that as well. But the most important thing to really focus on here is that recovery isn't just like, okay, I'm going there and then I'm done. Recovery is an entire lifelong process, just like spirituality, right? And once you kind of start going into this sort of process of, hey, I'm going to be a better person, I'm going to really analyze what's going on, you realize that there's a lot deeper things that need to be recovered, and there's a lot more connection that you can make with yourself on a spiritual level. So it's a phenomenal journey, right? And I'm so excited to continue it, you know.
That's exactly how I feel on my healing journey that I've started like years ago. I'm like, oh, it's just something that is gonna be for the rest of my life. There is no ending to it. And while sometimes can feel like overwhelming because there are gonna be moments when you're like, oh my God, this is so much and it's so hard. I would say the same is on the other side, that it's such a beautiful journey, because what you do, you actually just go deeper within yourself and you just discover and connect more and more with yourself, with life, with the divine, and with those around you. So this was such an amazing conversation, Josh. I'm so grateful for you, for sharing your story, for being here and sharing your beautiful wisdom. Is there any lasting words that you would like to share with the audience?
Absolutely. Well, I also want to open my communication with anyone. So please, if anyone has any questions or any comments for me, please, you know, DM me at Soltari Music. I would love to hear from you guys. I'm also, you know, open ears. Personally, you know, I'm not a professional, right? But I can definitely point you in the right direction. And the big key here, big thing here is communication. I think that everyone needs to communicate with everyone a little bit more in the age of technology. You know, I know that we're here on Instagram, but talking, just talk to a friend, talk to that one person that doesn't talk at work, you know, that coworker, because just one conversation can change dramatically the course of someone's day. And I've found that just even by being a little bit more mindful, that person next to me that looks like they're having a really bad day, be like, oh my God, I love that jacket, and be genuine about it. Don't be like, oh girl, I love that jacket. No, like literally be genuine. It is so insane how much that could change someone's day or someone's week, right? So that's my big thing here. And never stop talking to yourself either. Your body is also this beautiful human being, and having that connection with yourself just goes so much for you and for everyone around you.
So beautiful. And what I want to add with the fact that you said I'm not a professional, and I think we spoke about that before. What I can tell you, a girl here that has tons of different certifications in this arena, is that the most important thing, at least for me, it's the experience and then the embodiment of what it is that you are learning from your experiences and applying the tools that you are learning, along the way from all these different recovery processes and groups and so on, where you are going, embodying them and leading with them. I can tell you it's at least 10 times fold more important than just having a certification on your name. So that's what I want to leave you with here. The importance of your experiencing and leading from that. It's very, very, very important. Thank you so much to each and every one of you for joining us. Thank you for coming live, for coming replay, and go and follow Josh, because I'm sure he's going to share moving forward a lot of amazing content about not just about life, but about recovery, because this is becoming his life mission, and I know it and I feel it. So make sure you go there and follow Josh for future content and connect with him, send him a message, stay in touch, and also make sure you go and follow me for upcoming episodes on Spiritual Changemakers with amazing guests like Josh. And thank you for your time. Thank you for your space. I love you. I appreciate you. And I believe in you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to Spiritual Changemakers podcast. To stay connected and help us reach more people like you, please subscribe, follow, and leave a comment. Join our community of spiritual changemakers on social media to connect with like-minded individuals and continue the conversation. Remember, the power to create positive change is within you. Keep showing up as your best self, and let's keep the magic of change alive. Until next time.